right before my grandfather drew his very last breath. He held a multi-billion-dollar empire in one hand and 3 matches in the other, telling me and my adopted brother to choose between them. Without a single shred of hesitation, I snatched the multi-billion-dollar fortune, leaving my adopted brother with nothing but the 3 matches. Who could have guessed that those 3 matches possessed divine prophetic powers? All one had to do was strike a match and make a wish, and that exact desire would instantly manifest into reality. Consumed by bitter resentment over our parents' perceived favoritism toward me, he immediately cursed our parents to suffer a horrific calamity. Sure enough, father suddenly dropped dead from a massive heart attack, and mother, while rushing frantically to the hospital, was violently crushed by a massive speeding truck. Fueled by absolute rage, I grabbed a meat cleaver to hunt down my adopted brother for revenge, but he merely let out a chilling sneer as he struck the second match, wishing for me to be sold into a brutal overseas forced labor camp, to endure unspeakable torment until my agonizing death. Paralyzed with absolute terror, I emptied my entire life savings to hire thousands of elite bodyguards, sealing myself inside a flawless, impenetrable fortress. Yet in the dead of night, every single one of my bodyguards mysteriously collapsed unconscious, and I was ultimately dragged away to that hellish labor camp, enduring endless torture until I finally breathed my last. But when my eyes snapped open once again, I realized I had regressed back to the exact day of the inheritance division. Right at this moment, my trembling grandfather was producing those 3 matches. His voice raspy, dry, and incredibly weak. A multi-billion-dollar empire were these 3 matches. The 2 of you may only choose one. Wei Chun, you are the eldest. You make your choice first. A violent shudder ran through my entire body as the breathtaking reality of my rebirth finally sank in. Recalling the horrific, tragic demise of my family in my past life, I instinctively threw a frantic glance toward my parents. They were standing there, completely alive, safe and sound, offering me warm, encouraging nods. This time, without a millisecond of hesitation, I reached out and grabbed the 3 matches. The entire room instantly froze in absolute shock. My aunt muttered, "Has Chin gone completely out of his mind? Those are literally just 3 ordinary matches. It's not like they're made of solid gold." And he's just going to hand over a multi-billion-dollar empire to a mere adopted child. I know he wants to be the bigger person, but he needs to read the room. This is madness. My adopted brother's eyes flared with desperate greed. Look how he hesitates. If he doesn't want the fortune, then let me take it. My father stepped forward, highly concerned. Chun, did you make a mistake? My company has literally just gone public, and your mother's health has been rapidly deteriorating lately. This is the absolute worst time to be throwing away money. My good boy, I know you have an incredibly kind and gentle soul, always putting your younger brother's needs before your own. But if you simply take the multi-billion-dollar inheritance, you can easily split it half and half with him later. There is absolutely no need to go to such self-sacrificing extremes. No, father, I only want these 3 matches and nothing else. My brother has been an orphan since he was a small child, and his fate has been far more tragic and pitiful than mine. I won't touch a single penny of this massive inheritance. I am willingly relinquishing all of it to him. My adopted brother was so ecstatic he could barely keep his feet on the ground, smugly signing his name on the inheritance deed with a triumphant grin. He offered me a completely fake, condescending show of gratitude. Thanks for the charity, big bro. Don't you worry. When you eventually end up completely broke and begging on the streets, I'll make sure to throw a couple of cheap buns your way. I didn't bother responding to his arrogant, gloating behavior. None of them had any idea of the terrifying truth behind these wish-granting matches. Late that night, I could hear my parents tossing and turning restlessly in their room. What on earth was Chun thinking today? We raised him for over 20 years, only for him to turn out to be an absolute fool. The brutal debt collectors are coming to our door tomorrow morning. If we can't come up with the cash to pay them off, they're going to seize our house and leave us with absolutely nothing. Our family's ancestral rules were incredibly strict, demanding that every descendant pull themselves up by their own bootstraps. My father's business had recently suffered a catastrophic collapse, leaving him buried under a mountain of high-interest predatory loans. He had desperately counted on me using grandfather's billions. to bail his failing company out of this lethal financial hole. But instead, I had stubbornly chosen 3 measly matches. The moment my adopted brother secured the massive fortune, he immediately drowned himself in a sea of lavish, degenerate partying. Expecting him to willingly part with his new wealth to save our parents was nothing short of a delusional pipe dream. Watching my parents agonizingly lose sleep all night, my heart ached with profound guilt. Quietly slipping away, I struck the very first match. I wished for my parents to be blessed with boundless, astronomical wealth. With my wish cast, I drifted into a peaceful, deeply satisfied slumber. But early the very next morning, I was violently jarred awake by my mother's blood-curdling screams. "Chun, wake up. Everything is gone. It's all completely ruined. Our entire livelihood has been wiped out overnight. There is absolutely nothing left. How could fate be this cruel? We are buried under tens of millions in debt." Father was sitting flat on the floor, clutching his head in utter defeat, his entire body trembling uncontrollably. I stared down at the charred, blackened matchstick in my hand, a chilling shiver running straight down my spine. How on earth did everything go so horribly wrong? Mother was driven to near madness with anxiety, seeing me standing there like an absolute statue. Her bottled-up desperation finally exploded in a wave of fury. "This is all because you chose those cursed, worthless matches. You brought nothing but absolute ruin upon us. It's over. This must be a curse from the heavens. If you had just claimed that multi-billion-dollar inheritance, we would never have been dragged into this living nightmare." Mother wept hysterically, her voice breaking, while Father silently pulled her into a tight embrace, wearily closing his eyes without uttering a single word. My mind was spinning in a chaotic daze. Why did it turn out like this? I had literally wished for my parents to be blessed with endless wealth. Why did they suddenly suffer a catastrophic, absolute bankruptcy? What kind of sick, twisted catch was hidden within this wish? With my heart hammering, I rushed back into my bedroom to grab the second match, but before I could even strike it, our front door was violently kicked off its hinges. My boys worked up a damn sweat coming all the way out here to collect, and you people are just lounging around like royalty. This is your absolute final warning. If we don't have our cash by tomorrow morning, don't blame us when we start breaking bones. Before the old debt could even be settled, a sudden, devastating fire broke out at the warehouse, saddling my parents with an astronomical, multi-million-dollar liability claim. Having hit absolute rock bottom, my desperate parents finally called my adopted brother. Only on their 10th consecutive attempt did he finally deign to answer, his tone incredibly lazy. "My boy, your mother and I are in desperate, life-threatening trouble. Grandfather left you a massive, multi-billion-dollar empire. We aren't asking for much. Just lend us $30 million to get these monsters off our backs. If we can't pay them, those ruthless loan sharks are going to end our lives." Right at that moment, on my adopted brother's social media feed, he was flexing a brand new, ultra-rare Rolex, valued at well over $50 million. Yet, faced with our parents' desperate, tearful pleas for survival, he merely let out a theatrical, utterly fake sigh of helplessness. "Oh, Mom, Dad, it's not that I don't want to bail you out, but this inheritance was specifically left to me as my personal estate. I can't just throw it around carelessly. If you want to blame someone, blame my brain-dead older brother for choosing 3 useless matchsticks." Before my parents could utter another desperate word, the line went dead as he coldly hung up on them. A mere few minutes later, he arrogantly uploaded a brand new post, featuring him cuddling a tiny, pampered puppy with a miniature, solid gold crown resting atop its furry head, accompanied by a sickening caption, "Money is meant to be spent only on those who actually deserve it." My parents were so incredibly furious their entire bodies were trembling violently, desperate to scrap together any cash we could to pacify the debt collectors. The following morning, I auctioned off my entire collection of prized, beloved sneakers, and even traded in my high-end smartphone for a cheap, heavily used burner phone worth barely a few bucks. Mother tearfully sold off her cherished bridal dowry, while Father liquidated his absolute favorite car, barely managing to pull together a couple $1,000,000 after hours of desperation. A faint, weary sigh of relief escaped Father's lips as the tension in his shoulders eased. This meager amount should at least keep them off our backs for the time being. Mother, having finally regained her composure, heavily apologized to me in tears. Wei Chun, earlier this morning, your mother completely lost control of her emotions and unfairly unleashed all of her desperate rage onto you. I know in my heart that none of this nightmare is your fault. I'm so incredibly sorry, my son. Please forgive me. My throat tightened with a sharp, burning ache, and I barely held back my tears. Perhaps my fateful choice really had been a colossal mistake. Father gently interjected, "All right, let's just let the past remain in the past. Wealth is merely temporary, but as long as our family is still alive, we can survive." Exposing that ungrateful monster's true, rotten colors at such a cost is a price well worth paying. To think that we took him in because we pitied his lonely, miserable state and kindly adopted him into our family, only to raise a treacherous, cold-blooded viper. Our meager dinner consisted of nothing but stale, plain buns. Yet the three of us felt a profound sense of warmth and solidarity. Father passionately discussed his ambitious blueprints for the future, his eyes burning with renewed determination. As long as I still have breath in my body, I will absolutely build our family empire back from the ashes. Late that night, grit my teeth in raw desperation and struck the second magical matchstick. I wish for my parents to become completely crippled and destitute for the rest of their natural lives. Because my very first wish had been horribly inverted, I chose to wish for the absolute worst-case scenario. I prayed with all my soul that this time, my parents would be blessed with boundless health, peace, and eternal prosperity. I tightly squeezed the charred, dead remains of the second match in my fist, refusing to close my eyes for even a second out of sheer terror that, just like the night before, I would wake up to yet another catastrophic tragedy. I no longer cared about astronomical wealth or high society. I only wanted my parents to be safe, healthy, and happy. I forced myself to stay awake until 5 in the morning, when a wave of heavy exhaustion finally claimed me. I finally drifted off into a light, uneasy slumber. When my eyes snapped open, the entire house was dead silent. With my heart hammering wildly against my ribs, I crept toward my parents' bedroom, stealing a quick glance inside. They were still sleeping peacefully, completely undisturbed. An immense wave of relief washed over me. But right as I turned on my heel to return to my own room, 2 blood-curdling, agonizing screams echoed simultaneously from behind their closed door. I violently threw the door open, and the horrific sight before me nearly made me black out. They had been completely fine just moments ago, but now, every single one of my parents' toes had turned a sickening, rotting black. They were clutching their feet, writhing and wailing in unbearable, agonizing pain. My mind went completely numb with sheer panic as I frantically dialed for an emergency ambulance. By the time the paramedics arrived, the mysterious, necrotic blackness had already spread from their toes, rapidly consuming the entire lower halves of their bodies. The lead physician's face was grim as he delivered the devastating news. The necrosis is spreading too fast. We must prep them for emergency bilateral amputation. Immediately, hearing those words, my mind completely fractured, recalling the exact words of my second wish. I wanted nothing more than to beat myself to death on the spot. Every single cent we had desperately scraped together was now completely swallowed up by astronomical medical bills. How could my parents be subjected to such a horrific, twisted fate? Watching me sob hysterically in absolute, broken despair, the seasoned doctor could only shake his head in heavy, helpless pity. As for the underlying cause of this rapid decay, we are completely in the dark. An anomaly of this scale, forget about a physician of my level. Even my legendary mentor has never witnessed anything like it in his entire career. The very next afternoon, the ruthless debt collectors tracked us all the way to the ward. Damn it, we've been hunting you deadbeats down for days. Did you honestly think hiding in a hospital would keep you safe from us? Today, we don't care about your excuses. We're breaking your limbs. But the exact moment they barged into the sterile room and laid eyes on the horrific, mutilated state of my beloved parents, they instantly froze dead in their tracks. All of their terrifying, aggressive bravado was instantly replaced by a wave of pure, heavy pity. Man, forget it. Just pay us back whenever you actually get back on your feet. Before turning to leave, the lead thug actually tossed a $200 bill onto the table, telling me to go buy myself a decent meal. As I shoved the crumpled bill into my pocket, My trembling fingers brushed against the cold wood of the third and final match. The first time, I had wished for pure, boundless blessings, only for that blessing to warp into a devastating, catastrophic curse. The second time, I deliberately wished for horrific tragedy, hoping the rule of inversion would magically transform it into a miracle. But that horrific tragedy manifested in the physical world with flawless, brutal accuracy. This was never some magical, wish-granting treasure. This was, and always had been, a direct portal to Pandora's box. But if I don't make a final wish, we are at an absolute dead end. This third match is the absolute last lifeline for me and my parents. Yet how on earth should I phrase this final, high-stakes wish? My mind is completely scrambled, a chaotic storm of panic and doubt. With my parents, now, completely dependent on my constant care, I have no choice but to temporarily push the mystery of the matches aside. Overnight, my vibrant parents were reduced to helpless cripples, their bodies and minds slowly rotting away under the relentless onslaught of agony. Yet, even when the excruciating pain keeps them wide awake through the darkest nights, they still desperately try to comfort me. With tears pooling in their eyes, they plead, "It doesn't hurt at all, our sweet boy. Please don't tear yourself apart over us." Perhaps this is merely a trial sent down by the heavens, and as long as we survive this storm together, our lives will shine brightly once again. Swallowing my bitter tears, I force myself to stand tall and find some strength. In order to buy some desperately needed, nourishing food for my parents, I sprint to a nearby construction site to work as a grueling manual laborer. After breaking my back for hours, I barely managed to scrape together a few $dozen. I immediately used the hard-earned cash to buy a single pound of decent beef, my mind painting beautiful pictures all the way back to the hospital, of my parents' exhausted faces finally lighting up with warm, happy smiles. But the absolute second I push open the door to the hospital room, Mother violently hurls a heavy glass cup straight at my forehead. "Get out! Get the hell away from us right now." Dazed and bleeding, I freeze, my eyes scanning the room, until they land on my despicable adopted brother, who had vanished for days, now standing proudly right beside my parents' beds. He smirks, smugly waving his high-end smartphone right in my face, before turning to gently wrap his arms around our crying parents. "Mom, Dad, I know everyone assumed I was out there mindlessly partying and wasting money. But in reality, I've been secretly keeping a very close eye on my older brother. I detected his incredibly shady behavior early on, and I used a stealth drone to capture this horrific footage. This video is 100% authentic and unedited. My dear brother acts like a saint on the outside, but underneath, he is a cold-blooded, demonic monster. On the glowing screen, the high-definition footage clearly shows me clutching the second match, praying with absolute sincerity. I wish for my parents to become completely crippled and destitute for the rest of their lives. My parents' eyes instantly flare with a terrifying, venomous rage. No wonder we've been hit by one catastrophic tragedy after another. It was you all along, dragging us into hell with your sick, twisted curses. In a frantic, suffocating panic, I desperately try to lay bare the absolute truth. "Mom, Dad, please, you have to let me explain. Those matches grandfather left me are real. They possess a terrifying power to grant wishes. The first time, I desperately wished for us to be blessed with boundless wealth. But the curse inverted it, forcing us into sudden, catastrophic bankruptcy. That's exactly why, on my second attempt, I deliberately made the opposite wish. A flicker of uncertainty crossed my parents' eyes, but my adopted brother lunged forward and delivered a stinging, violent slap to my face. "Oh, so going by your absolutely ridiculous logic, the heirloom matches grandfather left behind are completely cursed and will only bring ruin no matter what you wish for? What an absolute pile of garbage. He was your biological grandfather, you lunatic. Why on earth would he ever leave you such a cursed, demonic item?" My parents, finding his twisted arguments incredibly logical, saw their gaze instantly harden back into icy, unforgiving glares. From this exact moment onward, he is the one and only true son we recognize. As for an absolute bad luck parasite like you, get the hell out of our sight and never return. I completely, utterly fractured inside. How on earth had my reality degenerated into this absolute living hell? He violently hurled all of my meager belongings out of the hospital room, and I seized the fleeting opportunity to aggressively confront him. This is all your sick, twisted doing, isn't it? You already secured the entire multi-billion-dollar fortune. Why are you still trying to steal my family away from me? No grand reason, really. I simply find your pathetic face incredibly irritating. With a heavy, resounding thud, the hospital door was violently slammed shut in my face. Inside, the cozy family of three burst into joyous, warm laughter that echoed painfully down the sterile hospital corridor. With strangers passing me by, I stood outside the locked door, looking like an absolute pathetic clown. In my past life, he harbored a murderous, bone-deep hatred for our parents. In this life, his sudden, loving approach to them absolutely carried a sinister, hidden agenda. I had to unmask the horrifying truth, and fast, or the bloody, tragic demise of my past life would inevitably repeat itself. My mind instantly raced to a highly plausible theory. My adopted brother had somehow swapped the genuine matches in my possession. The miraculous, wish-granting matches I was supposed to have had been craftily replaced by him with a cursed, dark artifact of pure calamity. I liquidated every single remaining asset I owned, even drowning myself in massive loans to hire a high-end private investigator. But the final, shocking results of the probe left me utterly shattered. Those 3 matches were indeed the exact ones grandfather had hand-selected for me. My adopted brother had never once brushed his fingers against them, making a physical swap completely impossible. I desperately begged the private investigator to dig even deeper, but the seasoned detective flatly, coldly rejected my request. You literally buried yourself in massive debt just to hire me. To investigate 3 completely ordinary, cheap matches? Kid, are you sure you haven't gone completely off your rocker? I'm washing my hands of this bizarre case entirely. I don't want your madness rubbing off on my reputation. Because of my increasingly desperate, frantic behavior, every major private investigative agency in the city blacklisted me. If logic and modern science couldn't unravel this nightmare, my only remaining choice was to plunge headfirst into the supernatural. I posted my terrifying story online, igniting a massive, viral storm, and a highly respected, legendary spiritual master reached out to me, offering to evaluate my case completely free of charge. Overjoyed, I immediately bolted to his secluded sanctuary. After listening intently to my bizarre, tragic tale, the Grand Master's eyes welled with profound empathy. He fiercely beat his chest, swearing he would deliver me from this curse. Yet, after examining the final match under a magnifying glass for hours, he couldn't detect a single trace of dark energy or demonic tampering. Ultimately, he could only offer some vague, comforting platitudes, reassuring me that the physical match itself held no inherent evil. Could the rot actually be originating from within my own soul? But, just weeks prior, I had undergone a comprehensive medical evaluation, proving my physical health and mental stability were in absolute peak condition. Just as I hit a dead-end wall of absolute despair, my phone buzzed with a highly mocking photo from my adopted brother. Hey, big bro, Mom and Dad finally cleared out your room and gave it to me. Oh, and isn't this that rare, vintage model you've cherished like absolute gold since we were kids? Oops, my hand slipped and it shattered into pieces. You're not going to hold a grudge, are you? I squeezed my phone so hard the screen nearly cracked. That toy was the one and only physical keepsake, left to me by the late grandfather who had loved me most. Pure, unadulterated rage flooded my veins, and I wanted nothing more than to tear him limb from limb. But suddenly, a minuscule detail in the background of his photo caught my eye. Connecting it to the spiritual master's puzzling words, a lightning bolt of realization hit me. I finally understood the chilling mystery of why my first 2 wishes in this regression had backfired so catastrophically. And more importantly, I now knew exactly how to phrase my 3rd and final wish. Back in my cramped, dark rental room, as I struck the final match, my entire body trembled with sheer, euphoric excitement. To think the truth had been staring me in the face this entire time. Yet it took me so much agonizing suffering to finally piece it together. The exact microsecond the flame flickered out, I caught a faint glimpse through the window pane. A tiny, blinking red light hovering in the night sky. He was indeed still using a stealth drone to spy on my every move. With a cold, knowing smirk, I packaged the charred matchstick and mailed it directly to my adopted brother. The third and final wish has already been cast. In just a few days, you will inevitably crawl to me, begging for my mercy. He merely scoffed, curling his lip in absolute, arrogant disdain. I no longer had the energy or patience to trade useless insults with him. So I crawled deep under my blanket and fell into a profound, heavy slumber. For the first time in an eternity, I slept with absolute peace of mind. I held a solid, unwavering belief that when I finally opened my eyes, a bright, beautiful, and happy new life would be waiting for me. When I awoke and opened my eyes, there he was, standing right before me. My heart instantly surged with a wave of triumphant excitement. I honestly hadn't expected the final magical match to manifest its reality so incredibly fast. So, you've already crawled back to beg for my forgiveness, huh? Well, out of respect for the years we spent growing up together, if you hand over exactly half of grandfather's multi-billion-dollar estate, I'll call it even and let your past sins slide. I spoke with absolute, ironclad confidence. When he snapped that mocking photo of my broken childhood toy yesterday and sent it to gloat, a tiny detail captured in the background of that image had revealed a monumental, game-changing clue to me. The distinctive symbol visible in the corner belonged to a notorious underground figure, a ruthless mercenary known across the black market as Vulture. Vulture was a heartless sales word who operated strictly on cold, hard cash. As long as the payout was high enough, he would commit any atrocity without hesitation. In my past life, after being thoroughly ruined by my adopted brother, I had poured massive funds into hiring that exact man as my bodyguard, meaning I was intimately familiar with his signature criminal markings. With that thread in hand, I rapidly pieced the puzzle together. The moment I cast my first wish for my parents to achieve boundless wealth, my adopted brother had immediately placed a high-value hit on the dark web. In truth, my wish to make my parents astronomically wealthy had actually succeeded. A massive corporate tycoon willing to invest billions had sent a courier to deliver a substantial cash advance to my parents. But right as half the funds were successfully delivered, the ruthless mercenary hired by my brother ambushed them and stole all. Not only that, but the sudden, devastating fire that crippled my parents' business was also a deliberate act of sabotage executed by that same criminal. The terrifying truth was that the first match had granted my deepest desire flawlessly, but my adopted brother had completely blinded me with his illusions, fooling my desperate mind into believing the magic of the matches only manifested in a twisted, inverted fashion. That was why, on my second attempt, I had foolishly wished for an absolute nightmare. The matchstick possesses no concept of human morality, good or evil. It simply receives a command and executes it with absolute, ruthless precision. And because of that, my second wish had directly condemned my poor parents to a lifetime of being crippled. This was exactly what the spiritual grandmaster had tried to tell me. There is absolutely nothing wrong with the matches themselves. Armed with this devastating, shocking revelation, I felt a surge of absolute confidence when I cast my third and final wish. And, just as expected, the very next morning, my adopted brother walked right through my door. I smirked triumphantly, waiting for him to drop to his knees and beg. But the look in his eyes was incredibly sinister and twisted. With a cold, mocking grin, he casually handed me a hand mirror. "Hey, big bro. I'm seriously dying of curiosity. What on earth did you actually wish for? To make yourself look like a horrific, decaying monster?" A sudden, icy jolt of absolute dread instantly paralyzed me. With trembling hands, I instinctively grabbed the mirror, and the very microsecond I saw my reflection, I shrieked in sheer terror and violently shattered the glass against the floor. What? How on earth is this happening? No, this can't be real. I must be hallucinating. My eyes are playing tricks on me, refusing to accept this living nightmare. I forced myself to look down at the jagged shards littering the floor, but the brutal, unforgiving reality dealt my sanity a final, crushing blow. Though the glass had shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces, every single fracture shard reflected an incredibly grotesque, ancient, and shriveled face. I slowly, fearfully pressed my shaking fingers against my cheek, and the dry, leathery texture of my withered skin made me want to vomit. In the span of a single horrific night, I had somehow aged by a staggering 70 years. This is impossible. I cracked the code. I mastered the rules of the matches. How could my third wish have failed so catastrophically? Yang Di put on a theatrical, sickeningly fake expression of utter confusion. Man, that is incredibly bizarre. Those legendary matches can grant any human desire imaginable. Yet you chose to transform yourself into a hideous, decaying corpse? Brother, I had no idea you harbored such a twisted, grotesque fetish. My heart felt as though it was being violently crushed by an icy fist. If the physical match itself held no inherent curse, then my third wish, where I desperately demanded that Yang Di suffer, the ultimate, agonizing retribution for his sins, should have destroyed him. Why did the karmic backlash strike me instead? I lunged forward, fiercely grabbing Yang Di by his collar. You did this. You're behind this horrific trick. What kind of dark, demonic sorcery did you use to deflect my curse and rebound it entirely onto me? With a look of pure disgust, Yang Di violently brushed my shaking hands off his chest. His face twisted into an expression of absolute, mocking disdain. Using black magic on you? Please, a pathetic, brainless insect like you isn't worth wasting such high-level power on. But hey, big bro, since you're already standing on the absolute brink of death, I will gladly let you in on a little secret. The truth is, I also regressed back in time. My pupils violently dilated as my brain went into overdrive, processing the shock. In our past life, he relied entirely on the matches to cast his wishes, ultimately driving me and my parents to a horrific, restless grave. If he had truly regressed alongside me, then in this current life, he should have fought tooth and nail to steal those matches from me. I desperately grappled with the logic, unable to comprehend it. Then why on earth did you just let me keep the matches? Were you seriously not terrified that I would use them to destroy you? Yang Di erupted into a fit of wild, manic laughter, laughing so incredibly hard that tears streamed down his face. My dear brother, I know you harbor a burning, murderous hatred for me. Your third wish was undoubtedly meant to drag me straight to hell. Yet, here I am, standing before you completely untouched and in perfect health, while you have been reduced to a grotesque, decaying monster who belongs in a coffin. Tell me, brother, does it feel like your chest is about to explode from sheer, agonizing fury right now? I stood there completely frozen, paralyzed by the sheer horror of his words. Yang Di leaned in, whispering into my ear with a chilling, demonic grin. You see, those 3 matches can indeed grant any human desire, but they also demand a horrific, unavoidable prize from the wielder's own soul. In our past life, I used my first 2 wishes to systematically orchestrate your and our parents' tragic, bloody ends. But not long after all of you finally perished, my own living flesh began to slowly blacken and rot away. Even when I desperately used my third and final wish to beg for my own body to be healed, the magic was completely useless. That was when I finally realized the grand rule of the matches. Every single wish inflicts an equal, devastating curse upon the one who makes it. So in this life, I intentionally paved the way for you to claim the matches, solely because I wanted to watch you trigger your own desires and suffer the catastrophic, agonizing rebound of the curses. I wanted you to experience the exact same putrid, decaying hell I went through, condemned to a living death of endless, unbearable agony. Yang Di's voice grew increasingly manic and unhinged as he aggressively hoisted his smartphone, snapping a flurry of high-definition photos of my grotesque, withered face. Smile, big bro. This is literally the absolute best you are ever going to look for the next 15 years. I'll make sure to save these precious memories for you. Over the next 15 years, every single fiber of your pathetic body, from your brittle bones to the hairs on your head, will slowly, painfully rot away. You will spend every waking second enduring pure, unadulterated torment. And even if you desperately scream for the sweet release of death, your cursed body won't let you die. You will be utterly trapped, unable to truly live, yet entirely unable to end your own misery. In my past life, that endless, agonizing torment drove me completely insane. But don't you worry, my beloved older brother. In this life, I will personally hire the absolute best medical specialists and pump you full of the most ridiculously expensive life support drugs, just to guarantee that you remain fully, agonizingly conscious every single agonizing minute of every single passing day. After all, that is the least I can do to honor our beautiful brotherly bond, isn't it? Staring at the manic, raving psychopath standing right in front of me, an overwhelming wave of cold disappointment washed over my soul. Years ago, when my parents first brought him home from the orphanage, he was a frail, starved little creature, trembling like a frightened bird, who did nothing but follow me around, meekly calling me his big brother. I remember handing him a single piece of candy back then, and he was so profoundly moved that he nearly burst into tears, passionately swearing that he would grow up to make billions of dollars, just to buy me all the sweets in the world. Our entire family felt such deep, aching pity for his tragic background that we practically pampered Yang Di, treating him like fragile glass. He was always incredibly sensitive and insecure. So from childhood all the way through our teenage years, everything Yang Di owned was identical to mine, and in many cases, his things were far better and more expensive than mine. I genuinely believed that by surrounding him with unconditional love and warmth, Yang Di would grow up to be a kind-hearted, upright, and confident young man. But I was fatally, tragically wrong. Some monsters are simply born with rot festering in their very souls. With a slow, calm motion, I peeled the highly realistic prosthetic mask off my face. Yang Di's manic, mocking laughter instantly died in his throat, his bloodshot eyes bulging so wide they looked ready to pop out of his skull. I casually reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a pristine wooden match, playfully waving it right before his terrified eyes. Gee, I'm so incredibly sorry. Yesterday, the match I set ablaze was nothing but a cheap, ordinary supermarket match. The genuine third match remains completely untouched in my hand. I still hold the ultimate, absolute power to grant one final wish. Now, what do you think I'm going to wish for this time? Yang Di stood completely paralysed in sheer dumbfounded itself, but his twisted, cunning mind desperately scrambled to regain its composure. Are you insane? Aren't you terrified of the catastrophic backlash? I chuckled, shaking my head. To this very second, you still haven't figured out, have you? The sole reason you suffered that horrific, decaying backlash in your past life was because you weaponized those sacred wishes to commit heinous, cold-blooded atrocities. You accumulated such massive, unholy karmic debt that the universe crushed you under its weight. A pure, righteous wish does not carry a devastating, rebound curse. Even in this current life, when my second wish condemned my parents to a horrific, crippled existence, it was cast out of a tragic, desperate misunderstanding, believing with all my heart that the magic of the matches operated on a rule of strict inversion, meaning my core intent was still to save them. And so, my soul accumulated zero malicious karmic debt. All that agonizing, withered theatrical display I just put on was merely a psychological trap to make you confess to your crimes. And every single word that just tumbled out of your mouth has been fully recorded and broadcasted live to our parents' phones. They finally see you for the absolute, ungrateful monster you are. And now, I'm going to strike this genuine third match to ensure you suffer the absolute, ultimate retribution. Yang Di let out a feral, blood-curdling shriek and lunged at me like a madman. Give that match to me right now, you bastard. The two of us ended up in a chaotic, desperate struggle on the floor, him thrashing and clawing like a rabid animal in a corner, even reaching over to seize a heavy wooden chair nearby, bringing it down with all his might directly onto my temple. With a sickening, dull thud, the heavy impact sent me crashing hard to the ground, and the pristine wooden match slipped from my fingers, sliding across the floor. Yang Di immediately scrambled to snatch it, striking it to ignite a bright flame. I wish for your entire body to completely rot and decay into ash, condemning you to an eternity of torment. I went again, big brother. In your past life, you triggered your own demise by weaponizing these matches to curse others, resulting in a truly horrific, miserable end. Yet in this life, you still dare to harbor such malice and invoke another curse? Are you truly not terrified of the absolute, crushing, karmic rebound? Yang dismirked triumphantly, putting on a sickeningly moinogen fachada. Oh my, whatever do you mean? I would never curse you, big bro. I was under the absolute impression that this magical match only granted wishes in a completely inverted, opposite manner. Gee, I am so incredibly sorry about that. My true, pure intention was to wish for my beloved brother's perfect health and endless, beautiful prosperity. My tongue must have slipped, and I accidentally stated the exact opposite. You'll forgive your clumsy little brother, right? But sadly, the flame has already burned all the way down, and there is absolutely nothing I can do to reverse the magic now. Since my big brother has always been so incredibly sweet and soft-hearted, you'll definitely find it in your heart to forgive me. Won't you? Yang Di batted his eyes in a disgusting display of faux innocence. A sinister smirk plastered on his face while his eyes burned with lethal venom. I simply let out a long, calm sigh. My actual third wish was for our parents to be blessed with perfect, long-lasting health, and for you to face the ultimate, righteous hand of justice. Yang Di clicked his tongue in complete, arrogant impatience. One matchstick can only grant one single command, and mine has already been cast. You can save your pathetic, useless desires for your next life. Having delivered his final insult, Yang Di turned on his heel to leave. But with a cold smile, I slowly reached behind my back and produced another match. You see, that match you just burnt. My dear little brother, you didn't honestly believe I would be foolish enough to pull out the genuine third match, just to let you snatch it away from me so easily, did you? The toy you just grabbed was nothing but a completely ordinary matchstick, while this one I am about to ignite right now is the one and only genuine wish-granting artifact. Yang Di's face contorted with pure, unbridled fury as he shrieked. You dare to play me? How could you manipulate me like this? You had doting parents, a warm, perfect, and loving family. Your life was already overflowing with absolute bliss, brother. So why did you have to constantly make life a living hell for a poor orphan like me? In the past, whenever I heard him play the victim with those words, my heart would inevitably ache with profound, crushing guilt. But now, hearing his toxic delusions only makes me want to vomit. Some people are simply born with a dark, ungrateful, and parasitic soul. No matter how much love you pour into them, it will never be enough to satisfy their greed. Oh, so you think holding that little match makes you untouchable? Even without those magical flames, I possess more than enough power to make your life an absolute, living hell. Yang Di frantically tapped a sequence of commands directly onto his glowing smartphone screen, and a squad of ruthless, black-clad mercenaries instantly kicked the door open and swarmed the room, led by none other than the cold-blooded assassin himself. At your service, young master. What are your orders? Yang Di pointed a trembling, Malijo's finger directly at me. I was told you're the absolute master of breaking people's spirits, that no matter how stubborn they are, you can break their bones and make them crawl like dogs. I want you to unleash your most brutal, agonizing tortures on my dear brother. The more sadistic and merciless your methods, the better. Start by dousing his face in gasoline and lighting it ablaze. I've always absolutely loathed his disgusting, seductive charm. His seductive charm? I stood there completely, utterly baffled. From childhood all the way to adulthood, I had always been an extreme introvert. Who on earth could I have possibly been seducing? Seeing my genuine expression of complete, sheer confusion, Yang Di flew into a manic, blood-red rage. You've manipulated and seduced so many women that you can't even remember your own victims anymore, can you? Back in kindergarten, there was a very wealthy, prestigious young heiress who adored me. But you just had to slide in and whisper a few poison words to her. And from that exact moment on, she completely iced me out and never spoke to me again. If it wasn't for your pathetic, jealous interference, I would have married into a powerful, elite dynasty years ago and become a highly respected billionaire tycoon. I wouldn't have had to endure the patronizing, pitying looks of this household. The bizarre memory suddenly clicked, and I rolled my eyes in absolute disbelief. That girl's family had been running a massive, highly illegal syndicate. Back then, after discovering she was aggressively targeted by Yang Di, I was terrified of Yang Di getting hurt or corrupted, so I personally warned that young heiress to back off. I never could have imagined that Yang Di would harbor such a petty, murderous grudge against me for all these years because of it. I spoke in a slow, incredibly calm tone. Tell me, do you actually know the truth? That girl's entire family was running a massive human trafficking ring, and they were all just sentenced to life in federal prison. Yang Di completely blocked out my words, refusing to let reality sink in, stubbornly clinging to his delusional narrative that I was a malicious brother, who constantly plotted to sabotage his happiness and success. Hurry up and set his handsome face on fire. The heavily armed thugs bellowed in obedience, hauling out a massive container of highly flammable gasoline. But in the very next heartbeat, the freezing cold fuel was splashed entirely all over Yang Di instead. You pathetic, brainless scum. Are you all completely blind? I explicitly ordered you to incinerate my brother's face, not mine. Unbelievably, the lead mercenary who had been so compliant just moments ago viciously kicked Yang Di straight in the gut, sending him sprawling. I've been running the criminal underworld for decades, and this is the absolute first time I've dealt with such a scamming, fraudulent client. You hired us to execute a high-profile hit, and paid us up front with a suitcase supposedly filled with solid gold bars. I genuinely thought you were a wealthy, high-rolling boss, but I just discovered today that those gold bars are nothing but cheap chocolate wrapped in foil. Did you honestly think you could play us for complete fools? And now you have the absolute nerve to call us brainless. It was highly evident that my third and final wish, demanding that Yang Di face the ultimate, crushing consequences of his actions, had officially begun to manifest in the real world. Yang Di shrieked in absolute terror, scrambling backward on the floor. It wasn't me. I swear. My brother used a cursed matchstick to transform those real gold bars into chocolate. The lead mercenary erupted into a loud, mocking laugh. A cursed matchstick? Do you honestly think you're living in some childish fairy tale, you psycho? With a wicked grin, the mercenary flicked open a silver lighter. Boys, light this pathetic clown up so he can finally wake up to reality. Amidst Yang Di's agonizing, blood-driven screams of pure terror, I seized the chaotic opportunity to slip quietly out of the dark rental room. I ran as fast as my legs could carry me, heading straight back to my family's home. Even though Yang Di had committed countless unforgivable, monstrous crimes, I still retained enough of my humanity to anonymously dial emergency services for him. After all, if I simply stood by and let him burn to death, I would eventually face severe prosecution under the eyes of the law. The moment I crossed the threshold of our home, my parents burst into tears and hugged me tight, overflowing with profound, agonizing remorse. If not for those raw audio recordings you sent, we would have remained entirely blind to his horrific, manipulative lies. We are so incredibly sorry, Bo-shun. Your father and I completely, tragically misunderstood you. My third and final wish was formulated: to grant my beloved parents a life of pristine health and absolute happiness. Incredibly soon after, a world-class medical team contacted us with shocking news regarding a revolutionary breakthrough in bionic prosthetics, actively seeking my parents to be the very first candidates for their trial, offering the entire cutting-edge procedure absolutely free of charge. My parents confidently entered the operating room, and just 7 hours later, they literally walked right out on their own. This state-of-the-art bionic technology integrated flawlessly with their nervous systems, allowing them to run and jump as if they had never lost their original legs. The elite angel investor who had previously sought to back my parents' vision also returned at this perfect moment to pitch a monumental joint venture, pouring massive capital into helping my parents rebuild their empire. A few days later, we received updates regarding Yang Di's grim fate. He had sustained catastrophic third-degree burns over 99% of his body, and the unbearable, ceaseless physical torment had driven him completely insane. My parents and I came to a silent, mutual understanding to never visit him. He had long since severed all ties of family with us, and we felt absolutely zero obligation to offer him our pity or comfort. A few months down the line, my parents' newly established enterprise successfully launched its IPO, perfectly riding an unprecedented wave of massive market demand. We didn't just wipe out our debts. we amassed a staggering fortune. Meanwhile, Yang Di, forced to clutch a pen between his teeth, frantically scribbled dozens of desperate apology letters, laments confessing how ungrateful and foolish he had been in the past, sobbing that he finally understood the gravity of his sins, and begging us to grant him just one last chance at redemption. Every single one of those pathetic tear-soaked letters was instantly tossed straight into the recycling bin. We all saw right through his pathetic facade. Yang Di wasn't actually remorseful. He was simply paralyzed with terror, eaten alive by his agonizing injuries and the rebound of his own dark desires. Yang Di withered away in an agonizing state of living death for 3 long years. When he finally drew his last breath, we outsourced his entire funeral arrangements to a commercial service. Word had it that, by the time Yang Di finally perished, there was not a single patch of healthy, intact skin left on his entire body. The severe, putrid decay had eaten so deep into his flesh that his blackened bones were visible to the naked eye. Following Yang Di's pathétique démission, the massive inheritance grandfather had originally set aside for him was legally transferred to me. I didn't squander a single penny on wild, hedonistic luxury like Yang Di did. I understood grandfather's legacy. I knew the blood, sweat, and tears he had poured into building his empire. Every single cent of this wealth represents his lifelong sacrifice. So I dedicated exactly half of it to funding global charitable causes, while utilizing the remaining half to construct a bulletproof, long-term financial portfolio. As the years steadily rolled by, my parents officially rose to become the wealthiest, most powerful tycoons in the entire country. I successfully graduated from my prestigious master's program, proactively stepping into our family's corporate empire by building my way up from the absolute bottom of the ladder. My parents had long since designated me as the sole heir to our family dynasty, and I was absolutely determined to grind with everything I had, to never let down my doting parents, to honor my own path, and to never allow failure to be an option. At the end of the day, life is always a reflection of this simple truth. Monumental success always walks hand in hand with relentless, unwavering perseverance. Sooner or later, we will taste the sweet fruits of our labor. But if you truly want to harvest those sweet rewards, you must continuously push yourself forward and absolutely refuse to ever back down.